is proposing dramatic new changes to the service rules of the IAS and the IPS, and this is creating a political storm and also a center versus states battle. I'm Barkha Dutt and you're with the Mojo Story. Let's take you through the key developments of this very important issue. A proposed set of changes in service rules that involve the transfers of both bureaucrats as well as members of the police and the forest service. The center has in fact proposed changes that will allow it to transfer officers without the consent of either the officer herself or the state that he or she may be posted to. Against the backdrop of a recent clash over exactly this issue between the West Bengal Chief Minister and the central government, Mamata Banerjee has dashed off a second letter to the Prime Minister calling the proposed changes draconian. Among the states objecting are several NDA states as well, because this in the end is about diminishing the power of the states, according to at least these state governments. It also reminds us how political the issue is of transfers when it comes to the IAS and the IPS. How should we look at this issue? Let's introduce our special panel today. From the BJP today, we are represented by Aroon Shah. Welcome to the program, Mr. Shah. It's a pleasure to have you on. Dr. Arvind Mayaram is with us. Mr. Mayaram has served as the finance secretary at the central government and has advised since then the Congress-led Rajasthan government in Rajasthan. Welcome to the program, Dr. Mayaram. From the Trinamool Congress, we are joined by Professor Prakash Mishra, senior leader of the party, has also been a professor at Azad University. And joining us today is a senior security officer who's been a special director with the Intelligence Bureau, Mr. Yashovardhan Azad. Mr. Azad, I'd like to actually start, the program with both you and Dr. Mayaram, and then bring the politicians into it. So let me get your sense of, transfers are a deeply political issue, whether it's in the police or in the IAS. How do you see this move that the center, if these changes go through, could accord itself the power to transfer anybody without the explicit permission of either the state or the officer?
Prima facie, if you look at it, definitely it is so-called an attack on federalism, because it's quite evident that as per rules, you cannot bring an officer to the center without his own consent even. So the rule as of now would be, it was a fine example of federalism where the state would put up on offer a deputation list, which will comprise people who have for deputation, and the state recommends that to the center, and then the center picks the ones which are fit for central deputation. Now what has happened is that the center arrogates to itself the power to nominate, because the state only gives the number of people it can offer at various places, and the center is going to pick anybody center likes. So obviously it's an attack on federalism, there's no doubt. But look at the politics involved in it, because you see a majority of the states are the anti-NDA states, and those who are with the NDA have fallen in line. Therefore, what I'm trying to say is this entire concept of transfers, deputation is now mired in politics, and it will have a huge adverse impact and repercussions later. You see, these are things which cannot be rule bound. Earlier on, it was an excellent cooperation. If a particular officer was required for a particular job in the center, there would be a conversation between the state or the center at various levels, and he would go up. And that is the best way to do it. Or, one thing, Barkha, which I feel would be the best if they want to avoid any kind of controversy, is if you just completely leave it to bureaucracy and just furnish your demands to them. You say, I need a particular guy, and the bureaucracy, the cabinet secretary, etc., will take care of it. If you don't do that, and if you get involved yourself, then it will lead to very serious problems.
So what I'm hearing you say is that while the center is playing a hand of politics, so are the states that oppose the BJP. And when it comes to transfers, there is as much of a sort of bureaucratic sort of stranglehold by politicians over the bureaucracy, I beg your pardon, in the states as there is at the central level. Let me actually get Dr. Mayaram to respond to this. We saw a full-blown battle between the West Bengal government and, for instance, the center when it came to the top-ranking bureaucrat in the state, who then refused to go on deputation to the center and instead resigned and became an advisor. Now, that is also a kind of politicization of the bureaucracy, is it not, Dr. Mayaram?
Barkha, I think we need to go a step back a little, because this is all that we are talking of politics. But let us ask this question to ourselves. Why did the Constitution speak of all India services and central services separately? There is a whole set of services which the central government has at its disposal. Indian Revenue Service, there are large income tax, customs, Indian Information Service, all kind of services. I mean, there are a huge host of services that are called central services, and that they are with the central government. Now, when India was became a federal government, I mean, a system of governance, what was the need for an all India service? A service which will have dual control, both of central government and the state government. The reason for that was that the framers of the Constitution, the founders of this country, realized that India as a country has tremendous pulling apart forces as far as the unity of the country is concerned. For instance, you have different languages, different the state. Every state has different kind of ethos, culture, everything else. So how do you keep the center together? How do you create a system where the country will remain together? Therefore, this very unique and I would say a masterstroke by the framers of the Constitution. They came up with the concept of All India Service, where
Right.
close to 65% of those who are inducted in the service are from outside of the state. Even till today, that, I mean, in some way or the other, it has been compromised. But a large number of people who come into the cadres are from outside the state. So in Rajasthan, if you have 6 vacancies, 4 will be people who do not belong to the state. What was the reason for that? The reason was that the administrative framework that you have in the country should be of a nature which has a national perspective and does not have a parochial perspective of the state. And
Right.
therefore, you created this very unique framework. And if you look at the Constitution also, I mean, it's interesting. People don't read and see even before they come up with all this. I mean, all right, I'll stop here. But if you want,
No,
but there are.
I just want you to explain why you think the proposed changes would alter what the founding parents of the Constitution had in mind.
So, because you would see how. So, if you look at the Constitution, Article 312, what does it say? It says, notwithstanding in anything in Chapter 6 of Part 6 of Part 11, if the Council of States, not Lok Sabha, not Lok Sabha, the Council of States, the Rajya Sabha, only the Rajya Sabha,
Yeah.
which meant that the representatives of the states must agree. It is not the popular, like in a budget, it would be the Lok Sabha which has to pass the
Got it.
budget.
Got
But
it.
this is
So,
the Council of States has declared by resolution supported by not less than 2/3 of the members present and voting.
so
That if
you're
you
saying it.
explain.
Sorry, I'm sorry I'm interrupting you. You're saying it goes right to the heart of the federal spirit, as it were, of the Constitution if these changes were to go through. A number of states are also saying that. But I also think that Mr. Azad is the important point that the transfer of police officers and IAS officers has become a deeply political issue, even within the states. And we need to look at it plainly. So if the center is seeking political control of the bureaucracy, the states are continuing to do that in their own way, at their own level. And bureaucrats and police officers are caught in this, as it were, political football. Aroon Shah of the BJP, Mr. Shah, if you could tell us what is the thinking, what is the rationale? Why would the center want to accord these rights to themselves? What is wrong in asking for the consent of both the officer as well as the state government?
Well, Barkha, to begin with, let's get into some facts. Of the 5,200 IAS officers, only 458 are posted with the CDR, which is less than 10%. It was close to 19% in 2014. Now, with regards to the facts and figures, before I jump into it, I would also like to respond to Mr. Azad when he said it's an attack on federalism. As far as attack on cooperative federalism is concerned, we've seen this happen again and again. If I have to quote a couple of incidents, I can just share what's happened in the state of West Bengal in the last 1.5 years. Be it the Darjeeling DMS Punambalam, he was transferred hours after he met the Honorable Governor of the state on 2nd November 2020. Rajiv Mishra, Praveen Tripathi, Bholanath Pandey were called for central deputation after an attack on BJP President Jagat Prakash Nadda. Was also a member of the Rajya Sabha, and the Chief Secretary of the state Alapan Bandyopadhyay. We've seen him walking out of the meeting at Kalaikondo on 27th of May 2021. So, with regards to this, we have to certainly delve deep into the facts and figures. Now, only 10% mid-level IAS officers were posted with the union government in 2021, which is a sharp fall from 19% in 2014. Total pool of such officers at this level expanded from 621 in 2014 to 1113 in 2021, which is an increase of 80%. So, in order to
Okay.
meet with the scarcity of such officers, the government has to take proper steps. This is a good move with regards to this, and I completely
Okay.
agree with the step which has been taken by the central government.
Let me get Professor Om Prakash of the Trinamool Congress to respond. What happened with Mr. Bandyopadhyay? If let's remind our audience that this is your top-ranking bureaucrat in the state who's accused of basically not showing up at a meeting with the Prime Minister. The centre then asked him to go on deputation to the centre. He refused. He chose to retire from the service and became a chief advisor to Ms. Banerjee. Is that not also the politicization of the bureaucracy, Professor Om Prakash?
Well, actually, not. It was a response to the uh, type of action that was being proposed by the central government and which they wanted to take against Mr. Bandyopadhyay. Uh, just now we heard the BJP spokesperson, and I think that he has actually exposed the hypocrisy of the central government's move. if
How?
we do have less number of central officials to serve the central government, it is the responsibility of the central government to take the initiative to have more officers in the country. And in fact, whether the officers are serving center or whether they are serving the state, they are serving government of India and the state governments, and that is the scheme. The extensive calibration has gone into the making of the Constitution of India, and I very much appreciate what uh, the bureaucrat, former finance secretary, Dr. Ram said, that there is a very fine balance here. And the central government is trying to track the balance in such a way that as if it is on one side and the states are on the
May
other.
I interject?
That
May I
actually
interject?
will not
May I
happen.
interject with a question? I know Aroon Shah also wants to come and give me half a second, Mr. Shah. Professor Om Prakash, be that as it may, you say that the shortfall, in officers available cannot be resolved by diminishing the federal spirit of the Constitution. Fair enough, but you haven't answered my question. Do you think a chief secretary should be retiring from service to advise a chief minister? Is that also not a kind of politics? That's what. From the outside, someone who's neither a bureaucrat nor a politician, to me it seems that bureaucrats and police officers have got caught in this political football between the BJP and the non-BJP states.
I don't think that you've got the point. We have Supreme Court judges who are being appointed governors, who are actually in the parliament. You have IAS and IPS officers, they are resigning and joining the political race in Uttar Pradesh without even serving the compulsory, waiting period. In the context of Mr. Bandyopadhyay, he was going to complete his term, and he is not the first example of a bureaucrat who, after retirement, has been retained or actually has been serving the state
Okay.
government. There are many
No,
examples
yeah,
at the
that
zoning
is
level
that
and
is
the
true.
central
No,
level.
that is true that there are examples across state governments and across parties. Just coming to Mr. Azad, I'll just let Arun Shah complete his point. Go ahead, Mr. Shah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, couple of points, Barkha. Since Mr. Om Prakash Mishra has led this to this point, I would like to remind him of a report which was published on 2nd of May 2017 in the Hindustan Times, wherein the IAS Association had literally drafted a letter to the government of India, wherein they mentioned that only 12 IAS officers from the state were on central deputation against the state central deputation reserve pool of 78. Vacancies in the West Bengal as on 2nd May of 2017 was 101. Whereas in Bihar, it was 128, but they had sent 41 officers against West Bengal, 12. So now, with regards to this, if he's talking about scarcity of officers at the central level, it is because of the deprivation and the politicization which is being done by state governments. Secondly,
Okay.
he was also, yeah, just another point, he was also talking about Supreme Court judges doing this and that. I would like to remind him of a PIL which was filed in January 2021 by a West Bengal lawyer whose name is Abu Sohel. He had filed that Rule 6.1 of the IAS Cadre's Rule 1954 should be struck down. But on 1st of March 2021, the court ruling said that it did not find any merit in the petition. So with regards to this, I would also like to tell Mr. Mishra, do not expose the hypocrisy of the state government at the helm of affairs in the state of West Bengal.
Okay, before I come back to the politicians, I want to go get perspectives from outside the political realm, back to Dr. Mayaram and Yashovardhan. Mr. Azad, go ahead. I think you made the point that there's a little bit of truth on both sides of this debate, right? There's the center flexing its muscle, and there's the state governments flexing their muscles. And actually, the reason this is being so ferociously contested is who controls transfers. In some ways, the perception is they control the state, they control power. There's a direct linkage between transfers and the wielding of power, and that's what we need to call out the elephant in the room. Mr. Azad, go ahead.
Absolutely. Barkha, the point which you made is that the officers are becoming football between the center and state politics. Let me also tell you that the officers themselves are playing tremendous amount of politics, making politicians play football with each other. There are officers who never want to go on deputation. And that is why you have states who don't offer any deputation list at all, barring about 10, 12 officers. And this is because the officers feel extremely comfortable in their state. And giving the example of the West Bengal, the chief secretary never went on a deputation even once to the center. So the question is, no one can justify the absence of a chief secretary when a prime minister goes, whether he's from same party, other party, or whatever party. And therefore, the politics which is played by the office is amazing. I'll tell you, in Madhya Pradesh, when I was there were 4 senior politicians, and the IAS officers were happily belonging to those 4 cadres. In fact, they were called by the politician name and the cadre. And one of them, since he was a junior politician, it was called a subordinate cadre. So what used to happen earlier was, if the party is the same at the center and the state, there is no problem. These bootlickers who are actually officers by name, they serve the interests of those politicians when they go to the center and when they come back here. Now, I'll tell you another thing. In the state, a lot of their behind the scene work is hidden, because there is not so much of here because of the bhaichara which exists in the states. But going to the center, it's hard, pretty work. Ask Arvind. He worked in some top positions and other positions at the center. How different it is from the state and here. And
but
therefore, but last point, Barkha. And that's why what I say is, notwithstanding any rules, whatever rules you make, the state and center will fight over this issue. Jayalalitha refused to send 3 officers to the center. Nothing happened. States have been having it good. So what I'm saying is, center has a claim. I'll tell you the solutions later in the next round.
Okay, we'll take the solution in the last comments first. Let's agree on the problem. Dr. Arvind Mayaram, do you agree that while the center here is overreaching, which is, I think, the consensus between you and Mr. Azad, there is also a politicized bureaucracy, a politicized police force that chooses sides. And he gives the example of officers who've never gone on central deputation. And if you leave it to the officer to make that choice, is that upholding the independence of the bureaucracy? Isn't that also a kind of compromise on it?
Barkha, I think we have moved away from the key issue. Because when you come to about deputation to the central government, we need to speak about empanelment, the system of empanelment, how it is done. Many officers want to go to the central government. They are not picked up by the central government. So I think it's a more complex issue. It's not zero sum in that sense. But the key issue which we are missing out is that if the All India services have been designed in the constitution, in the law, because All India Services Act of 1951 also has very specific provisions which say that the central government may, after consultation with the governments of the states, make rules and regulations for recruitment, etc., of the All India Services officers. The Act also says in consultation with the state. So all I'm trying to explain to you is we should make, if we really want to have a meaningful conversation, we have to make a distinction between the politics of it, which we can discuss separately. But at this point of time, we have to understand whether these regulations which are being changed in the manner in which they are being changed will completely change the complexion of All India Services. Forget about everything else.
Yeah,
There is
that's
politics.
yeah.
This is the key. I mean, even the rules, when you look at them, and I'm amazed that our conversations, everyone, I mean, I'm not talking here, but I'm saying in the public space that I'm seeing, the conversations are simply opinions which we are flouting without even looking at the constitutional framework or legal
So
framework.
your biggest concern, Dr. Mayaram, is that it would actually change the entire sort of architecture of the All India Services.
Therefore, it will have a major impact in the manner in which the states and the centers then govern themselves. It is
Okay.
going to make a difference.
Okay.
And so everything from the constitution, from the act, and if you look at All India Service Rules also, what does it say? This is issued by the central government. It says that the central government, after consultation with the governments of the state concerned, hereby makes the rules. Everywhere there is a consultation, there is a conversation.
Yeah.
But also, let me just finally say one more thing. I think this argument that Mr. Shah has made just now, I mean, he has made an important point that the center is not getting enough officers. There are two things which need to be looked at very carefully. One is, in the case of deputation, the central government, has a conversation. They consult with the state government, but what do the rules say? The last word is with the central government. They can still, even today, under the present rules, they can still take anybody on deputation against the views of the central government, but after consultation. Those
Got it.
rules existed. So
I
what
got-
is the
I get-
reason for making this change?
I get your point, and I want to take that to Aroon Shah and then to Professor Om Prakash, that the center is already entitled. I think that's a very important point by Arvind Mayaram, if needed, to take an officer on deputation. But why do away with the process of consultation to address the issue of shortfall, or even to address the issue of politicization? How does consulting, how does a dialogue between the center and any state X, how is that a bad idea? How is bypassing dialogue ever a good idea? Arun?
Well, the rules categorically mention that there will be a consultation. Now, I'll tell you where the loophole is. The loophole is with what Mr. Mayaram and Mr. Azad have mentioned, that there is an offer list which has to be procured by the central government from the states. Now, what is happening is on the contrary. Now, I'll tell you certain figures. Now, as far as the state of West Bengal is concerned, since time was short and I could not make most of my depositions in front of you, the current strength, the CDR strength of the state of West Bengal is 78. Do you know the amount, the number of officers deputed to the center? 8. Now, with regards to this, a common consensus has to be developed. The rules categorically mention that there will be consultation, but if they do not agree with it and they do not cater to the number of officers required to run the nation, the center will be forced to acquire them. This is what Mr. Mayaram is saying, that in any ways is going to happen. So where is the problem? Where is the issue? Now, I'll tell you certain figures.
The problem is in doing away with the dialogue process or the consultative process.
No, it is categorically mentioned that there will be
I think Dr.
consultations, there
Mayaram
will be
wanting to
deliberations will be held.
Can I get a brief interjection from Dr. Mayaram? Go ahead, Dr. Mayaram.
Sure.
I think, Mr. Shah, you are giving a lot of statistics about the cadre strength and the number of the central. But can you also give me the numbers of persons from West Bengal who have been empaneled, for instance, at the secretary level or at the additional secretary level by the government of India? Or would you be able to give us the breakup of the number of officers from Gujarat cadre who are empaneled and people who are empaneled from, say, Rajasthan? You are giving only one set of information. What you're forgetting is that in the process of empanelment, Government of India itself does not want certain number of persons to come to the center. So let's not get lost in the statistics that you're giving. I
Arun
think it
Shah,
would be
complete your
important
point.
for you
Allow.
also to look at the other numbers where the
Okay.
government of India denies the right to the state
So
official
it works
to
both
be able
ways, and
to.
that's the point I'm making. It actually works both ways. It's such a deeply ferociously political issue, whether we call it that or not. Arun Shah, quickly complete your point,
Yeah,
please.
allow me to interject. Sir, when 8 out of 78 officers are posted from the state of West Bengal, officers are not being released. There was a report by the India Today magazine in the year of 2017 that officers in the state of West Bengal are being literally put across, and they have been cautioned to not to appear for central deputations. Now, as far as other states apart from the state of West Bengal are concerned, sir, Mr. Azad was mentioning about the three IPS officers in the case of January 2020, sorry, June 2001, when Judge Jalita did not allow the IPS officers to get themselves voted in the central cadre. Archana Ramachandran, the case of 2014, she was being called upon by the the central government to come and join as joint director of CBI. What happened thereafter? She was suspended by the government of Tamil Nadu. And as of today, she is a member of the Lokayukta. Sir, I am not being biased with facts and figures, but statistics are important. Statistics
Yeah.
is everything that is being discussed at
I,
this,
I,
this
I
eclectic
think
debate.
I think like every debate in this country, there are shades of truth on all sides, and people don't want to see all the shades of truth. Professor Om Prakash Mishra, do please respond with your last thoughts, and then I'll give Mr. Azad the last word. I have a couple of minutes left, so a minute each to you. Go ahead, Professor Om Prakash.
We should all read the Constitution, especially the section on administrative relations between the union government and the state government. Number one. Secondly, I hope that the central government is not trying to rush in with this type of an amendment in order to spite West Bengal, because so many examples was cited by the BJP spokesperson that I fear that they have actually taken upon themselves to fight West Bengal. What we do here in Bengal is that we fight, and we fight for the constitution, and that is how you might find that we are on the opposite side more
Okay.
often than the case. Third is that this is an issue that actually involves the BJP or the Congress or TMC, every state government. It is
Yes.
about harmonious relationship. It is
And I
not
just
about this particular state
that
government.
last point,
So
that last point
therefore,
is very important.
BJP government, they would also not be very happy.
I,
It is a
I, I,
rushing move, not to be pursued, please.
okay, Arun, just one line that a lot of the BJP states are also not happy. Bihar is on record objecting, for example, quickly, and then Mr. Azad gets the last word. Arun Shah.
No, I would like to respond to Mr. Mishra. He was talking about cooperative federalism and harmony. The Honorable Calcutta High Court and the NHRC report, which was furnished before them after the post-poll violence, categorically mentioned that in the state of West Bengal, the the law of the ruler persists and the rule of
Okay.
law is absconding.
Okay,
So
Bengal, another debate on
this is
Bengal
a
another
form
time.
of double standards being spewed by Honorable Professor Mishra. I have a lot of respect for him, but I'm sorry, I cannot accept the position in this debate.
Okay, we'll invite both of you to discuss the state of law and order in Bengal on another program. I'm at the end. Yashovardhan, Azad, last word to you.
Thank you, Barkha. I again reiterate one point which is very, very critical to this, germane to this entire discussion, that rules and reality have always been different. Even earlier, there was a serious problem about center getting some of the bureaucrats. If they want somebody like Arvind Mayaram, either a chief minister will not relieve him because he's very good, or he will not relieve him because he's arraigned to this side, so he will not let him go. So, these problems have occurred all the time. And that's
Absolutely.
why the only way I agree with Mr. Mishra is cooperation. Cooperation is not possible. They'll keep on fighting. Even in VIP security, we had the same problem. So what should the center do? First of all, I'll tell you, many of the cadre posts that they have encadred in the police, at least, and in the IAS, they are such third-rate posts that any non-matriculate can do it. First thing is to downgrade all that. Second is, we can run this country with 15 ministries. The rest of the ministries are only to give ministers jobs. That's another very serious problem. So if the parties really want to do something about it, we can do it. And the last point is that you have to get in more professionals now in the job. If you don't get a Mayaram for finance ministry, then get a professional. It's much better. Rather than, fighting over this will keep on, and it is mired in politics.
I'm going to call you back for another show on the lateral entry of professionals into the bureaucracy, which is another whole hot potato. We'll leave it there. Dr. Mayaram, to Professor Om Prakash, to Mr. Aroon Shah, and to Mr. Yashovardhan Azad. A really interesting conversation, and this is going to be a big political issue once the dust on the election in the State Assembly settles down. You can bet on that. And we'll have more on that and more of you very soon. Thank you for joining us, and to our audience. See you tomorrow as always. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.